Let's talk about recruiting in the Big Ten right now. Let's start off with Ohio State because they are the highest ranked class. They have a 9-man class that's ranked 9th overall, and they have a 94 rating, so that's a mid 4-star. That's really good for them. Now, this is a big year for Ohio State because it's the first year without Urban Meyer. Ryan Day has taken over, and he went 3-0 when he was replacing Meyer those first 3 games last year. But he has to continue having Ohio State play at the level that they've been playing at. Continue to have them play to a point where they win the Big Ten and they can compete in the college football playoff. And they're off to a really good start because they got the number 1 player in Pennsylvania and the number 1 player in their own state of Ohio. That's pretty good for them. But they have to show that they are still the same Ohio State even without Meyer. Alright, next up's Penn State with their 11-man class that's ranked 11th overall. Wait. Ohio State has a 9-man class that's ranked 9th, and Penn State has an 11-man class that's 11th? Huh. Interesting. Anyway, Penn State has a 90 rating, so that's a 4-star average. That's pretty good for them. And this is also a big year for Penn State because it's the first year without Trace McSorley. So James Franklin is really going to have to show that it wasn't just Trace McSorley. It wasn't just Saquon Barkley. He had a role in that as well. And one way to do that is to develop your players. They've gotten some really good players these past few years. Now, show that you have developed them because this is a very young team. It's going to be a very young team coming into the season. Show that these players have developed and still play at the same level that you've been playing at these past few years with Barkley and McSorley. Next up is Michigan's 9-man class that's ranked 17th overall. Now, this is a big year for Michigan because Jim Harbaugh has to beat Ohio State this year. There's no questions about it. He has to beat them. He has not beaten them yet, and last year was probably the worst loss Michigan has ever had against Ohio State. And also with Harbaugh, he has to identify players that he wants and make sure that he's able to develop them because he's been really good at developing some of his players during his time at Michigan. If he can beat Ohio State and keep identifying players that he knows he can develop, Michigan, they're going to be in good hands. Iowa's 10-man class is up next. That's ranked 19th overall, and they have an 87 rating. Now with Iowa, the reason they've been one of the better teams in the Big Ten for the past decade is because they are good at identifying underrated players, bringing them in, and developing them. Iowa's one of the best teams at doing that. And I don't expect this class to be any different. I expect them to find some underrated kids that they're going to develop. And you know what? They're actually doing a really good job of keeping their kids at home. Getting kids from the state of Iowa, keeping them at home. Really good for Iowa. And this class, I expect it to be really good. Northwestern has a 10-man class that's 20th overall and an 86 ranking. Now Northwestern, they won the Big Ten West last year. And they're ranking the rewards in the recruiting because they got a nice group of mid 3-stars and some 4-star kids. Always nice when you can have a good mix of it. That's how Northwestern makes their team, and this year's no different. I really like this class from Northwestern. I got nothing more to say about it. Wisconsin's 8-man class is up next. They're ranked 25th nationally, and they have an 87 rating. Now, with Wisconsin, one thing they've always been great at getting is solid offensive linemen that end up being terrific players in the Big Ten. You look at the NFL draft, it seems like we can never get past the draft without a Wisconsin lineman being taken. Why? Because they are great at developing those guys and identifying those guys. Wisconsin, they are one of the most consistent recruiters in the Big Ten, probably in all of college football, because they are just good at finding players that they know they can develop, finding players that fit their system, and developing them. Wisconsin, I don't know what else to say. They're just a really good recruiting team because they know exactly what they want. Alright, Maryland's 8-man class is up next. They're ranked 33rd with an 84 rating. Now, that rating's going to go up. I expect that to go up if they have a really good season. But they have to have a really good season. They have to get to a bowl game. Past 2 seasons, they have not gotten to a bowl game, and they have a new head coach in Mike Locksley. When they got Mike Locksley, everyone thought, oh, he's going to do some great things in the DMV. But that hasn't happened yet, because Locksley is not just concerned with the DMV right now. He's getting players from all over the country. Look at their class. They're getting kids from Florida, from Maryland, from California. They have a kid from California. How often does that happen? So Maryland, this is a really good job by Locksley identifying players that want to be at Maryland. That's the key. Find players that want to be at Maryland and bring them in. Also, Maryland is really good at finding underrated players. You look at some of the best players on their team, a lot of them have been underrated coming out of high school. So Maryland, just keep doing what they're doing. And I expect them to have a really good recruiting class. Alright, Minnesota's 7-man class is up next. That's ranked 39th overall with an 84 rating. Now, this is a big year for PJ Fleck. He's coming into his 3rd year at Minnesota, and he has to show improvement on the field. He got into a bowl game last year. Now, can they take the next step and be more competitive in the Big Ten West? If they do that, then kids are going to come to them. Some of the top kids in Minnesota are going to come to them, and some kids from out of state are going to want to come to them. But they have to get it done on the field if they want to have a really good recruiting class. Indiana's 5-man class is up next. They are 51st overall with an 84 rating. Now, with Indiana, it's really tough for them to compete because they are in the Big Ten East. It's the same thing with Maryland. This is the toughest division in all of college football. In my opinion, it is. And with that, it's really tough to show kids that you can compete for a conference championship every once in a while when you have 4 teams that are going to do that every single year. It's really tough for Indiana to get that done. But what they can do is get to a bowl game and show kids, hey, we can still compete. Even though we're in this division, we can still compete, still get to a bowl game, and still have a winning season. They do that, that shows kids more than anything. And get a little bit more consistency with this class, they're going to be fine. Okay, Nebraska's up next with their 3-man class, 55th overall, and it's got an 83 rating. Now, Nebraska had a tough first year in the Scott Frost era. However, they finished the year strong, and if they just get to a bowl game, then they're on the right track. They're already recruiting at a very high level right now, but in order to keep getting these kids' attention, they have to get better on the field. They have to be competitive in the big games. When they go up against some of the big teams in the Big Ten, you have to be competitive and steal a couple wins. Nebraska does that, then their recruiting class is going to be fine. Michigan State's 4-man class is up next, 56 overall, 87 ranking, and that's what Michigan State normally does. Michigan State, they're another team that's been really consistent when it comes to their recruiting, and it works out for them. They develop their players really nice, and they are really competitive in the Big Ten. I mean, it's shocking to think that they had been to the college football playoff, and Michigan hasn't. You thought Michigan would be the one to get there before Michigan State, and yet Michigan State got there. So Michigan State, they are really competitive. They get kids' attention, and they're really good at developing their players and identifying players they want to bring in. So Michigan State, I'm not worried about them one bit. This recruiting class, I know it's going to be fine for Michigan State. I know they're going to have a good season. Not too much to say about it. Purdue's 3-man class is up next. They're 74th overall with an 86 ranking. Now, the big thing with Purdue, they have to take the next step on the field. It's not just much to get to a bowl game. It's about having a solid season where you can beat teams like they beat Ohio State last year. You continue to do that. Continue to be competitive. Continue to get better on the field. Those kids are going to want to come. They're off to a good start, but they have to keep getting better. Rutgers has a 3-man class, 75th overall, 85 rating. Now, Rutgers, I'm just going to come out and say it. They were the worst Power 5 team in all of college football last year. They overtook Kansas as the worst Power 5 team. That's an accomplishment, but not a good one. They've got to get better on the field. You can't go 1-11 again and expect these 4-star kids to want to come to you. That's not how it's going to work. If Rutgers wants to have a good recruiting class, they've got to get better on the field. They've got to be more competitive. They cannot go 1-11 again. And finally, you have Illinois with a 2-man class, 83rd overall with an 89 rating. Now, Illinois, they got some good players last year. They really did. They got some good recruiters on that staff, and they got some good players this year too. Now, they went 4-8 last year. They showed some improvement on the field. Now, get to a bowl game and show kids that you are on the right track. If Illinois can just be better on the field, they'll get some kids. It's about as simple as that. All right, guys. So that was the Big Ten. Next up is the Pac-12, and I'll see you then.